Oh, because of oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell happened. It just stopped. All right, let me
I'm watching an
see.
ad for Whataburger.
Hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Whataburger
I don't know
sounds
what the
good.
hell happened. Yep, there it is. All right, we're good. Whataburger sounds good.
It does. I'm actually going to cook for the first time in like over a week after the show's over.
I made stir fry last night. It was good.
That's kind of what I'm making after the show, except I'm using cauliflower rice.
Huh? I
I've
just
made it
use brown
before. It's
rice.
really good.
I use brown rice, some chicken breast, some broccoli, a couple of eggs, some soy sauce. It was good. Put a little hot
Yeah.
sauce in there. Gotta love hot sauce.
Oh, hot sauce actually sounds good with it.
It is. Dude,
I do
try it.
pretty much the same thing, except I throw in onions and carrots.
See, I'm not a big onion fan. Like, I like carrots and green peppers, but I don't dig onions all that much. I don't like I don't know, something about that crunch. I don't like.
Yeah.
Even though I like green peppers, and that's kind of the same thing. I don't know what it is. There's something about onions, like it's a little overpowering.
With onions, for me, they have to be cooked. Like I can't do
Yeah.
raw onions. There are some people that will take just like little handfuls of raw onions and eat them like candy, and it's
Oh,
like,
my
no, I
ex-wife
can't do
used to
that.
do that every time we would go to the local catfish place, Aunt Jenny's. Really good catfish
Hmm.
place. We should go there when you come over here, and because it's all you can eat fried catfish. But
Oh, that
she
sounds
she
delicious.
would always get like order a plate of chopped onions and just eat them. I'm like, oh, that's so gross.
Sounds like a place we have here. It's called David's Catfish.
I know that McGuire's has some really good fish and chips. I dream about it all the time.
Uh, it's their lunch special every Friday.
I need
Yeah,
to come over there.
I've got their lunch menu memorized. Monday they do shepherd's pie
Ooh,
for
that
like six or
sounds
seven
good.
bucks.
Oh man, I need to come over there and meet up with you and Steve, and let's do a lunch date one Saturday and go to McGuire's.
No, that'd be great.
What are
Let's
you
see.
doing over there? Can you hear that?
Mm-mm.
Oh, she's not doing it now. Hear that? What are you scratching on? They never want anything to do until I start recording, and then they're like all messing with all kind of shit in here.
Of course,
Stupid cats. All
they're
right, let's
trolls.
see. I got everything pulled up, and everything's good on the soundboard, so I'm good to go when you are.
Yep, and I'll roll after you finish your countdown.
All right. Let me make sure everything's out of the way here.
Oh, and I'm not going to reveal the interview on the show. I want to
Oh
save it
yeah,
as a complete surprise.
keep that close to the vest.
Oh, of course.
All right. Well, I'm good to go.
Yes, sir.
And three, two, one. Do you like this show and you want to help support us? Do you want us to stay ad-free? Do you want extra episodes every month? Well, of course you do. Then head over to patreon.com/nerdcaveretro and become a Patreon supporter of this very show. It is Halloween Horror Month here at the Nerd Cave Retro Show. My name is Jason Robbins.
And my name is Derek Diamond.
It's my favorite time of year. It is officially my favorite time of the year. It is Tuesday night. It is October 1st. I love it. I love every second of this month.
The timing couldn't have been any better. It
Absolutely.
really couldn't. The only regret is that it still feels like July outside.
Yeah, that sucks. It's probably going to be that way for another month and a half at least. But, you know, at least Halloween is here to get our minds off of it.
That's true. I've been ready for this time of year for a while. It's one of my favorites because normally it's not too hot, not too cold. I just love the fall time of year. I have much more free time. The weather's better. It's
Not
just a better
really.
time of year.
The weather's not better. It's still blazing hot.
Well, it should be better, but this year it's not.
Yeah, global warming doesn't exist at all.
I
It's
was about to
only
say climate change isn't real.
It's only October and it's still like 104 degrees outside.
Yeah, it's so Sunday I was out downtown and I made the mistake of wearing jeans because I went to a show at our local theater, and even walking from the parking lot to the front door, like my legs were just pouring sweat.
Yeah.
It was disgusting,
Mm-hmm. That's why I love living here.
right?
So what? Anything cool happened this week for you?
Nothing too out of the ordinary. I've been doing a couple of freelance jobs in addition to, normal work. So extra money's been nice. That and starting to plan my next film project and just trucking along with doing this show and doing the Derek Diamond Experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's been pretty much an uneventful week for the most part.
Same here. Not too much going on. I've just been working a lot and working on my comedy bits and doing stand up. I'll be in Mobile on October the. Let me look it up real quick. I can't remember which day it was. It was Monday, October 21st. I will be at the OK Bicycle Shop Comedy Night in Mobile, Alabama, starting at 7 o'clock, I believe. So if you're in the Mobile area, come out and watch me do some stand up. And that'll be fun.
I will do my best to make it out there.
But I don't know about you, but I'm itching to get to the news so we can get to our review for tonight. So how about it? You ready to go into news?
Let's do it.
This first story is from Engadget.com. Atari's VCS will offer thousands of retro games through a subscription. The Atari VCS is still months off, but it should at least have a healthy selection of retro games when it does arrive. Atari has forged a deal that would offer an optimized and expanded version of Antstream's arcade game subscription service exclusively on the VCS when it launches. You'll have access to Atari's full library of 300 plus games, plus thousands more titles from other vintage platforms. You could be playing a Nintendo 64 or Neo Geo game if Asteroids is no longer scratching your itch. The service also includes a global leaderboard and social challenges, and it'll support both the classic joystick and modern controller. And if you like to play on other platforms, the upgraded collection will be available elsewhere if you have a VCS account. It will cost you your 30-day trial will be free, but it'll cost you either $10 per month or $96 per year to access the catalog. I mean, this sounds interesting, but I have no interest in the Atari VCS. I don't know about you. I've heard too many bad horror stories about this thing so far.
It's fitting that you've heard horror stories in the month of October.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I would love to have one of these, but it's just, I don't know. This whole thing has seemed shady since day one.
I think the idea of having an Atari Mini is much better than actually having it.
Yeah.
Because the Atari was before my time. I really don't have any interest in playing it because I have plenty of other things to occupy me. I haven't gotten the Genesis Mini yet, but eventually I will. I have the Switch. It just doesn't really appeal to me.
Yeah, I mean, I had an Atari 2600 when I was a kid. It was me and my brother's very first console that we got in Christmas of 1983. My parents got it for us. And I'll tell you the honest to God truth, Atari's not that great. Those games are not that great. I mean, the arcade versions of most of those games are good. I mean, there are a handful of games that are really good on the Atari. Like Pitfall was always fun. Asteroids, River Raid's a really good game. Missile Command's probably my favorite game for the Atari, but I still have my Atari. I've got like maybe probably 70 games over there, and I haven't touched them in a decade. So honestly, it doesn't do anything for me. And then I don't know what the VCS is going to cost. I think it's roughly about 200 and something bucks for this thing to play Atari games. No thanks.
As they say here in the South, ain't no way.
Nope, no way.
Ain't no way. Our next story comes to us from happygamer.com. Retrogaming preservationists discover a rare Nintendo 64 prototype controller revealing an iconic gaming accessory. This is actually a pretty cool story.
Mm-hmm.
Retrogaming preservationist Shane Batey found an early controller prototype for the Nintendo console. A first rendition of the N64, the gaming accessory had a weird shape and might have introduced the analog joysticks to the gaming market. He posted a long thread about his discovery on Twitter, chronicling his observations. It had some variants from the retail version, one being the joystick with paddings and appears thicker than the marketed model. Also, the colors of the C, A, and B buttons are not the same as the release versions. So it has a link to his Twitter post on the article. It reminds me of a black and white version of the N64 controller, and then the A and B buttons are a shade of gray. Same thing with the C buttons. The joystick is the most interesting part because it looks bigger, it looks thicker, but the design itself is essentially the same.
Yeah. I actually think I would probably prefer that fatter joystick part, like the thumbstick. It actually looks a little more, it's more beefy, durable, and it looks a little more durable.
Well, because that was a problem back in the day with the N64 joysticks, is that they were so small and so frail that you could wear those things out really quickly, and then you just have to go get a new controller.
Well, it looks like it's made out of... I would
prefer, but... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, it looks like it's made out of more kind of soft rubber, like you would see on like the modern controllers, thumbsticks. Like it would have a little more grip, because that was always kind of one of my problems with the Nintendo 64 stick, was it kind of had hard plastic, so you would kind of slip on it. This actually has a divot for your thumb, and it like I said, it looks like a little bit more soft rubber or plastic that it's made out of. Like you would have a little bit better grip on it with your thumb.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Essentially, I think the drawback to it is that it's still virtually the same design, and I know we've both been fairly critical of the Nintendo 64 controller.
Yeah. And I hate that because
that part hadn't changed.
I love that console, but man, that controller is just, it doesn't hold up well over the years.
If Nintendo does an N64 classic, I think they got to change up the controller design. They won't.
Not only that,
but I think they should.
I think if they start putting Nintendo 64, I would much rather them put N64 games onto the Switch, like they do Super Nintendo and Nintendo games for Switch Online, and do a little updating on them so you can use dual analog sticks with those old games. That I would like to see.
In a perfect world, they'd also tweak the graphics a bit.
Yeah, put a little
fresh coat of paint.
Covering. Yeah, fresh coat of paint. That'd be nice. Because
who knows?
Like we've talked about before, I think people think they want a Nintendo 64 classic, but I think once they get a good look at those graphics on a high definition television, yeah, you're gonna not want it anymore.
Yeah, because even going back and playing, I'll even throw Ocarina of Time in there. The graphics are not great. They don't hold up very well. The worst, though, is, from my experience, was GoldenEye.
Yeah.
Love that game, but yikes.
It's kind of like dating an ex. It's all good, in hindsight, but, you should never go back. Don't ever go back. It's
Well, and you quickly realize, hey, there's a reason why we weren't together.
Yeah. For our last story tonight, this is on readretro.com. Sega Arcade Classics House of the Dead 1 and 2 coming to Nintendo Switch. It seems the Nintendo Switch is picking up a couple more Sega Arcade Classic titles. House of the Dead 1 and 2 are getting the remake treatment by Forever Entertainment, a Polish game developer. You may be familiar with this company already, as they are working on remaking Panzer Dragoon and Panzer Dragoon's Way. These undead are not all slow shambling messes. Let's see. These undead. There's a slight sidestep of the classic horror trope, which is often portrayed as slow and plotting. Sure, these are the types of enemies here, just as they're not all that common. House of Dead 1 and 2 features a decent bit of variety between the zombies. With your firepower, you can further customize them by removing limbs, parts of their heads, etc. I'm sure everybody's played House of the Dead at least once. But I'm just wondering how exactly are they going to do it, because these games were light gun games. So is it like they were on rails light gun games? So exactly how are they going to do that for the controllers?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I mean, I like that they're using these old properties and bringing them back to relevance.
Yeah, me too.
Especially, does it have a release date?
That's what I was looking for, and I don't see it here. I don't think there is a release date yet.
I mean, now would be the perfect time to do it because it's October.
Let's see. Let me click this link here and see, just to see if they have a release date here. This is taking me to NintendoLife.com, which we get a lot of news from. Let's see. It says games are due for release next year, so no exact date yet, but it'll be next year.
Interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't say anything about the light gun either, so I'm not sure. I mean, it'd be interesting. I'd love to play these games again. They were always fun to play in the arcade. I think, if I'm not mistaken, weren't these on the Dreamcast too?
I'm not 100% sure. Let me look that up real quick. House of the Dead Dreamcast.
I'm pretty sure it was the Dreamcast.
Looks like they were.
Yeah. Because I can still see the box art in my brain.
House of the Dead 2 was definitely on it. I'm getting several links for that, so...
Yeah, it says here it was released in 96. The Saturn. Yeah, it was on the Saturn. Yep. Microsoft Windows. Oh, they have a mobile phone port, too.
Oh, mobile.
Yeah. It came out on the Saturn, let's see, March 31st of 98.
Should have put... Oh, no, we're not in March, so I couldn't have put that in gaming history. I'll have to remember that for March.
Be a good Halloween Horror Month game to do.
Yeah. Definitely.
But that's it for the news. Let's go ahead and move into this month in video game history. In October of 1983, Gekken launches the Compact Division TV Boy in Japan. It's the last second-generation console released. It was expensive and obsolete at launch, being discontinued shortly after. Never heard of this in my life.
It's so obsolete, there's not a photo of it.
Yeah, I know. I've never even heard of Gekken either.
Oh, get this. There were only 6 games released for it.
Wow.
Excite Invaders, Mr. Bomb, Robotin Wars, Super Cobra, Frogger, and Urban War Year 200X.
Interesting.
It was released months after Nintendo Famicom and Sega SG-1000.
Oh, yeah. I don't think anything called the Compact Vision TV Boy is going to compete with the Famicom or the Sega.
Yeah, their vision was pretty small.
Yeah.
So that was a really bad joke. Moving on, October of 1985, Atari Games releases Gauntlet. Based on the lesser-known Atari 8-bit game Dandy, Gauntlet is highly profitable, letting players insert additional quarters for more health.
I played a lot of Gauntlet back in the day. I played it a lot on Nintendo, even though the Nintendo port is not that great. It was still a fun game to play because you could play with 4 players.
Yeah, I remember us talking about this last year. The putting additional quarters into the machine for additional health,
Hmm.
that detail really stands out to me.
Oh yeah, good way to
Plus
be
the
a quarter hog.
Yeah, it reminds me because I always think of the old Ninja Turtles arcade game because I'm looking at the arcade cabinet and I see it divided into 4 different sections
Hmm.
and each has like its own color and everything. That reminds me so much of the Ninja Turtles game I used to play.
Oh yeah, well it was cool because it was one of the very first dungeon crawler games, and you had your different sort of a very early kind of RPG style party character bases. Like you have your warrior, a wizard, a Valkyrie, and an elf. And
Mhm.
you see, you had your warrior who was, melee, your wizard who was your, sort of, um, God, I can't. Words are hard. But you had your wizard, who was, of course, like distance attacks, and then you had your Valkyrie, who was I'm not sure exactly what she did, but then you had your elf, which was your ranged attack. So maybe
Yeah.
the Valkyrie was maybe she was sort of like a warrior, maybe a melee, because you had 2 ranged attack and 2 melee. So it was a fun game to play. I always played the elf when I played.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
And I can still hear this game too. It was one of the loudest games in the arcade when you walked in. You would hear Valkyrie needs food badly. Warrior needs
Oh man.
food.
It looks cool too.
It is cool. I would love to have that actual stand-up console for it. That would be awesome. I don't know why Arcade One Up hasn't done one yet.
Who knows, maybe they'll do it at some point.
Maybe. Also in October of 1985, the 18th to be exact, Nintendo releases Duck Hunt for the Famicom. That damn dog.
Still, I think one of the most brilliant characters in Super Smash Brothers.
Of
The
course.
reveal for him was just fantastic.
A dog still gives me anxiety to this day. I think that's why most of our generation has anxiety, is because of that dog.
Yeah, I will still say Duck Hunt, that's one of those iconic Nintendo games just because it was included with Super Mario Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
When you think of Nintendo, like one of the first 3 to 5 games that I think of is Duck Hunt. And
Yeah.
it was honestly I remember, playing the old NES at my aunt's house. The 3 games that I played were Zelda, Mario, and Duck Hunt.
Hmm. That was
And I
that
would get so
trifecta.
frustrated at Duck Hunt.
That was always the trifecta for anyone that owned a Nintendo. You had to have Super Mario Brothers, the Super Mario Brothers / Duck Hunt, and Legend of Zelda. Everybody had that.
Absolutely. No, Duck Hunt was a lot of fun. It's simple but really addictive. Let's see. October 3rd of 1989, Maxis releases Will Wright's Sim City, the first of the Sim games in a revolutionary real-time software toy.
I always liked SimCity. I love all the Sim games, honestly. I'll play any kind of Sim game any day of the week.
Still to this day, the only one that I've played is Sim City for the Super Nintendo, which I reviewed several months
Hmm.
back. And
So,
I know it's a huge phenomenon still.
oh yeah, I mean, there's
Never
been dozens of Sim games, and said
I feel like
here.
there's been one for every console almost.
Oh yeah, and then it says 2 million units copies were sold for just the Super Nintendo alone for SimCity. And somebody actually not too long ago actually found the ROM for the SimCity that was originally going to be released for the Nintendo, the NES, but they never released it. And someone
Mhm.
found the ROM not too long ago, and I think they actually they dumped it and preserved it. So that's cool.
That's awesome. No, SimCity it's one of those things that it's a very chill game for the most
Oh
part,
yeah.
but it's addictively fun.
Yeah, I'll play anything. That's why I love playing. Like even to this day, I just got Civilization is at 6 for the Nintendo Switch, and man, that game is fun. I love any kind of simulation games. Let's see, October of 1992. Is that where we're at? Yeah. Gremlin Graphics releases Zool, a character-based platformer following in the footsteps of Mario and Sonic. It goes on to become the best-selling Amiga game. I remember us talking about this last year. Zool. Yeah, I remember us talking about this. It actually looks pretty cool. I would love to play this game.
No, same. I mean, this was, a day and age where everyone was trying to create that mascot character to follow, because, I mean, obviously Mario had been around for several years. Sonic was just starting to really become relevant because I think, this was 92. Sonic came out in 91. So many people tried to recreate that mascot from, Crash Bandicoot to Spyro.
Yeah.
Even Zool.
I mean, this character.
And I've talked about my love for the Crash Bandicoot games, but to me, there are only two legitimate video game mascots, and that are Mario and Sonic.
Yep, I will agree with you there.
October of 1994, Killer Instinct is released, the first arcade machine with an internal hard disk. Not a lot of people know Killer Instinct was actually an arcade game before it was released for the Super Nintendo.
Oh, I remember. Our local arcade, Aladdin's Castle. They would have Killer Instinct tournaments on the weekend. And me and my buddy, who worked at the mall, I would go with him on Saturdays to go try out in the Killer Instinct tournaments and immediately get our asses kicked, and eliminated first because we weren't, 6-year-old Asian kids who could whip everybody's ass at Killer Instinct.
That reminds me of years ago, me and a few friends went to Atlanta for a Pokemon tournament. And all of us, there were, I think, 4 of us, we were all eliminated in the first round.
Yeah.
And then we just enjoyed the rest of our trip.
Is there any game you could play that you think you would at least last past the first round? I can't think of any game I would be that good at that I would be able to last at least a couple of rounds in a tournament.
Possibly Mario Kart. It would depend on the version though.
Yeah.
And then if I got to pick whoever I wanted in Smash Brothers, I could be very opportunistic. Like I could use Sonic and just stay away from everyone and just kind of pick my shots when I need to. But in all likelihood, probably not. But if I were to pick 2 games, it would be those 2.
I would say I could probably hold my own in Dr. Mario for a bit, maybe in a tournament setting. Anything else? I'm not sure. I'm not that great at games. I love video games, but I'm not good at them.
That's a trade secret that we shouldn't have released.
Yeah, I've never been good at games. I mean, even when I was a kid, I had, 24 NES games, and I probably only beat 4 of them as a kid. I didn't start actually finishing these games and beating them until I was an adult. So maybe I am getting better. I don't know. Maybe I'm better as an adult than I was as a kid.
Yeah, for me, I know I never beat the original Zelda until it was re-released for the Game Boy. But Mario, most Super Nintendo games I played, I would eventually beat. It would take me a while, but I would eventually beat.
Hell, I'm still trying to beat Ninja Gaiden to this day.
One day it'll happen.
It will. I
Hopefully
can get
that
to the
happens
final
just
boss.
in time for. Oh, go ahead.
I said I can get to the final boss, and that's where it just falls apart.
The perfect timing is if you were able to beat it right before we did our 200th episode.
Dude, wouldn't that be awesome? I got what, a year? Give me a year.
Yeah, you got a year. Yeah,
we'll
this
see.
is 150.
I'll work on it over the holidays.
Yeah, but real quick, back to Killer Instinct. It's actually a super underrated fighting game. I remember loving it when it came out, and it's obviously a rare game, so I'm going to have a little bit of bias to it. But the new one they did for, I think, the 360 That one not so much, but the original Super Nintendo and arcade version was great.
I wouldn't mind having a copy of this for Nintendo. I wouldn't mind. Didn't they have like a black cartridge for it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd
I
love
have
to have
one.
that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a game that I'll probably review by the end of the year.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, you should do that.
It's super fun.
October 25th of 1995, Funtech releases the Super A-Can console in Taiwan. What is this? Oh, that's a neat little console.
Yeah. Looks like a mini Super Nintendo.
It says inside is a Motorola 68,000, also used in the Sega Genesis and Neo Geo. 12 games have been confirmed to exist for the system. It kind of looks like a cross between like a Nintendo 64 and a Super Nintendo.
A little bit, yeah. Be interesting to, let's see, did it ever come out in the US?
Holy crap, the original introductory price was $2,900.
What?
That's what it says here, unless that's a typo.
In the new Taiwan dollar.
Oh, that's what I meant. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder what that relates to in
US
American
dollars?
Yeah. They don't have a converter here or anything.
Taiwan dollar to US dollar. All right, how much was that?
2,900.
2,900. That comes out to $93.38.
Okay.
American.
And that was in 1995.
That sounds much better.
So yeah, that was probably like $300 in today's money.
Yeah. That's interesting though. Like, did this come out for the US?
No, it just says Taiwan.
Oh, exclusively in Taiwan. I would say like that would be, if I could get my hands on one of those, that'd be
It
a
looks
really
pretty
interesting
cool.
thing to review.
I would love to have one of those just because it looks so cool.
Yeah. I even like their logo. Like it's very it's very bright and animated.
Yeah. You can definitely tell they're Nintendo fans. Whoever made this.
Oh, for sure. But to close us out on this month in video game history, in October of 1997, the original Grand Theft Auto is released for Windows. Who hasn't played a Grand Theft Auto game?
Did you ever play the original?
Not the original.
Yeah, it's a lot different than the current game types. It was a kind of a top-down, like almost like God mode, looking over the city, and you're like this little dude running around, like stealing cars and stuff. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, it was pretty primitive compared to today's Grand Theft Auto games.
I still remember when Vice City came out. Like that was the game to have around that time because it took place in the 80s, so the soundtrack was absolutely amazing.
I never played Vice City, but I was really into San Andreas. That was a cool game.
Yeah, San Andreas was good too. I haven't played Grand Theft Auto 5.
I haven't either.
But I played, which ones have I played? I've played Vice City, and I think Grand Theft Auto 4 and San Andreas.
Yeah, San Andreas was good.
Yeah. Grand Theft Auto games are fun. They're the games that like you do stuff that like you would in no way get away with in real life. So it's like you get to live that out through a very violent video game.
Run over hookers and
Hey, you said it, not me.
Before we go into the review tonight, Derek is going to give some shout outs.
Yeah, so as always, we'd like to give a shout out to our Patreons who, without them, the show would not be possible. Special thanks to AxeBlade07, Daniel Salmon, and Justin Olson. And if you want to become a patron, you can go to patreon.com/nerdcaveretro.
Absolutely. And tonight we're going to be talking about Castlevania Bloodlines, platform game developed and published by Konami for the Sega Genesis, released worldwide in March 1994. It was the only Castlevania video game to be released on the Genesis. Game storyline concerns a legendary vampire named Elizabeth Bartley, who was Dracula's niece, suddenly appearing in the 20th century, the early 20th century, plotting a sacrificial war in order to bring her uncle back to life. She orchestrates the beginning of World War I. Quincy Morris's son John and his best friend Eric Lecard vow to take up the fight against evil. Together, they manage to prevent Dracula's full resurrection. So I started playing this on the Sega Genesis Mini that I picked up a few weeks ago, the night it came out. And this is the one game other than Sonic Spinball that I have been playing the most. These two games. And I'm going to honestly say right now, this game plus Sonic Spinball and all three Sonic games are worth the $80 price tag for the Sega Genesis Mini. Especially
high
this
praise.
game. Oh, yeah. Like, just everybody knows my love for Castlevania games. I've never played this game, so I didn't know what to expect. Soon as I started playing it, I mean, in the first, just from the title screen alone, it was like, it felt like putting on an old, like an old comfortable pair of lounge pants. It's like, I know this world. It feels so comfortable and right. And I'll be honest, I'm still trying to get used to the Genesis controller. I'll be honest, I would much rather play on Super Nintendo controller, but that's just because that's what I'm used to. You know, like through the years, that's what I've played. But I did just see a little while ago that you can actually get on Amazon. There is a USB 6-button Sega controller that you can get. And I forgot the price of it, but it'll actually work with the Sega Genesis Mini. So if you're interested in getting a 6-button controller, you can do that. Get the USB controller, and it will work with the Sega Genesis Mini. I think I might actually try that because I just need more buttons. It feels like there's not enough buttons on it. Did you ever find that to be true with the Genesis?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
Like, I don't know. It's with the Super Nintendo controllers, you've got the buttons that are just kind of go along with your thumb, and they're in the perfect placement, you know, to like jump and do things. And with the Genesis, they're all like they're kind of curved, so you don't kind of get that good, you know, thumb slide between the buttons, if you know what I mean.
Well, the Genesis always had an awkward controller, in my opinion. Like you had I start with the Super Nintendo controller because it's comparing to the same eras, but the SNES controller just felt almost natural in your hand. Like you didn't really have to find the buttons.
Yeah.
With the Genesis, I always felt like I had to look down to say, oh, this is the button I need to press. But with Super Nintendo, it's like I know where everything is.
I mean, the shape of the controller itself actually is very comfortable. It's just I don't like the button placement. And maybe that's just me. I mean, it's probably people that were used to playing the Genesis. We've talked about it on the show before. I did not own a Genesis. I didn't play one very much, so I'm just not used to it. But the shape of the controller is good. I'm not big on the button controller placement.
No, I definitely feel your pain on that.
But a little bit of the plot of the game. In 1897, the long war between humanity and Dracula came to an end. As Dracula was laid to rest by Quincy Morris, a distant descendant of the Belmont family, peace was restored to Europe until the outbreak of the First World War, which transformed the continent into a dark world filled with massacre and violence. At the beginning of the war, in June 1914 at Sarajevo, the Crown Prince of Austria was assassinated. It was said that a strange, beautiful woman was involved within the shadows. The woman was Elizabeth Bartley, who, in order to revive her uncle, Count Dracula, had conducted an unholy ceremony which caused the war, giving her possession of human souls in Europe. The game itself takes place in 1917. You have two characters that you can play. You can play John Morris, who who is pretty much your typical Simon Belmont type character with the whip. which is how I've been playing. Because I don't know, there's something about playing Castlevania, and I want to use a whip. It's just that that it's the
It's
thing,
natural.
natural. But there's also the other character, Eric Lacard, who he uses a staff or like a pole arm, and actually it works pretty well. But I still prefer to play John Morris. But Eric Lacard is cool because with John Morris you can use the whip to a lot like in the Super Castlevania 4, where you can use the whip to kind of swing over chasms and things like that. But with Eric Lacard and his pole arm, you can actually do like pole vault type stuff, which is pretty cool. I mean, both characters have their, it just depends on your play style, whatever you really kind of prefer. But that actually gives the game a little bit more playability, because if you finish the game as John Morris, you'll want to go back through and play it as Eric Lacard. And that's the cool thing about these Castlevania games, especially this one. Like, man, it's hard. It's Castlevania hard, but it's not hard to where it's frustrating. It's more like trying to memorize the patterns. And that is what I love most about games like this, is if you learn the patterns, then you can just blaze through the levels. Because you don't have any kind of like weird spawning enemies. Everybody's always in the same spot every time. It's and your boss fights are all about learning the patterns. So the bosses aren't necessarily that hard. It's just learning the patterns. And each level has, your mini boss in the middle of the level, and then you have your final boss, and then you get the red orb, of course, at the end of the level. You have all your power-ups. You have the axe that you can throw. You have your boomerangs, your holy water. And with this game, it's a little different. Instead of collecting hearts to kind of fill up your special weapon meter, you collect not diamonds, but like gemstones, which isn't really that much of a difference. It's pretty much the same thing. One of the coolest things about this game, and what I said about immediately being brought back into the world of Castlevania, is the very first level of this game takes place in Dracula's castle from Castlevania 1 on NES. And the level design is the same. The enemies are pretty much in the same placement. It's like introducing yourself back into this world, especially at a time when you've had Castlevania 1, 2, and 3 on the NES, and then you have this game that came out in 94. So, almost, 7-8 years later after the first Castlevania game came out, and then you're back in Dracula's castle, and it's like it's the same, layout. So it's like it's going back to the beginning, and I found that really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And
I wish other games would do that.
Yeah, and that's what really instantly brought me back into this world again, was just how awesome that was to just be back in that castle, like hundreds of years later after Castlevania 1. And I don't know, it's just I love the Castlevania world so much, and I hope that there is a Castlevania season 3 coming out this month on Netflix, because this is really getting me in the mood to want Castlevania, more episodes of Castlevania on Netflix. But like I said, there's 6 levels to the game, and once you get past the first level, it takes a turn from where the first game was. The second level is more of a vertically scrolling level with rising water that you have to kind of stay above. The third level, you're going to the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and then the fourth level, and it's cool because you're not just in the Castlevania area. You're going all over Europe through the game, and you're going to Italy, and you're going to Germany, and all these different places, and fighting these different enemies. And if you love the Castlevania series, this is, like I said, this game alone is worth the $80 that I paid for the Sega Genesis. Because like I said, I'd never played this, and to be back in the world of Castlevania with this game. And this game really does show what the Genesis was capable of as far as music, graphics. The controls are really tight. I don't really have any problems controlling the character or jumping or anything like that. It's not quite as, I'm going to say that, I think Super Castlevania 4 is a little bit of a better game. Like, it's different. It's not, you're not going to get the same kind of experience. Like, I don't really want to compare the two games, but as far as the 16-bit Castlevania games go, I think Super Castlevania probably looks a little better. A little bit more detailed, but this game, like, there's just that Castlevania aesthetic to it. It's dark. It's you really feel like you're alone fighting these monsters, especially with the music and all that stuff. And it's the perfect game to play for Halloween Horror Month. Like, I love this game so much.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of gameplay before we started, and it looks like it plays really well.
Oh yeah.
Just from watching what little bit I did, it seems like the game plays really smooth. I thought the music was really good. Graphics look great. It looks like, whenever I do pick up the Genesis Mini, this will be one of the first games that I play for it. Because the only Castlevania game I've actually played, I've played a little bit of the first one.
Yeah.
And then I played Super Castlevania 4. But this one, it looks, I won't say it looks different, but it looks, like you said, it plays tighter than the other ones that you're from either watching gameplay or what little I've played. It looks like this might be one that I would enjoy the most.
I think you would. And I was reading here, we talked about the Castlevania Anniversary Collection that was released last May.
Yeah.
And I never picked it up, and I wanted to, and I actually looked at it on the Switch store, but never picked it up at the time. But it was released for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Steam, and Nintendo Switch. And this game was included on the Castlevania Anniversary Collection. So if you don't have, if you're not going to pick up the Genesis Mini and you want to play this game, you can play it right now for any one of those systems. If you have a Switch, it's on there, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. So I highly recommend, if you've never played any Castlevania games, that would be the thing to get, is the Anniversary Collection.
Oh, for sure. No, I would get it for the Switch myself, but like I said, I plan on getting the Genesis Mini at some point, probably within the next couple of weeks.
Awesome.
But I'm really excited to play this, though. I mean, it from what you've said and then from what gameplay I've watched today, it looks like a must get.
Oh yeah, it's one of the shining gems on the Genesis Mini. Like, this game is I had no idea how good this game was or how good it was going to be. I mean, from the moment I fired it up, I knew, I was like, oh yeah, this is this is worth the purchase right here. Talking about the music of Bloodlines was composed by Michiru Yamane, or Yamane, is that how you pronounce that? Who later garnered acclaim for her score on Castlevania Symphony of the Night and subsequent handheld Castlevania adventures. Though she once admitted to have worked under extreme pressure and deadlines, this soundtrack met the standards of the previous entries and is highly regarded on its own for its gloomy atmosphere. The music for the second level, titled The Sinking Old Sanctuary, was reused in later Castlevania games, Circle of the Moon, and for the Game Boy Advance, and Legacy of Darkness for the Nintendo 64.
Interesting.
Yeah, and like I said, it was hard for me to kind of pick out which music I wanted to play, because a lot of the music in this game has gotten stuck in my head for the last...
Well, even the opening theme was really good.
Yeah, and that harkens back to the original Castlevania theme. Like, that was the original Castlevania theme, just, pumped up for the Genesis version. So that was the one I went with. But every single track for this game is great. Like, if I had a CD of this, I would listen to it all the time.
Well, I think that says a lot about the music from back then, because when I think of newer games now, there's really no iconic music that stands out. But when you go back to Castlevania, Mario, Sonic, Mega Man, there are so many songs that are iconic and
Yeah.
get stuck in your head. And it sounds like, from what little I heard of the music, that this is no different.
Oh yeah. Let's see. Games Radar named Castlevania Bloodlines the 8th best Genesis game of all time. Let's see. Game Informer's Tim Turi praised the level of gore relative to other Castlevania titles at the time. He also called it one of the most overlooked treasures in the franchise. And I will say that's probably true. I mean, I don't really know why Konami decided to, and this isn't the only game they've done this for. They put out different versions of games for between the Super Nintendo and the Genesis. Like the Super Nintendo had, of course, Super Castlevania 4. Genesis had Bloodlines, and then you had what was it? Contra, and what was it? It was Hardcore. Yeah, Hardcore, which is on the Genesis Mini for the Genesis, and then you had Contra 3. What was it? The Alien Wars for the Super Nintendo. They did that a lot for their games, and I don't really understand why. And I mean, it's cool because now we have two different 16-bit versions of these games to play, which doesn't hurt my feelings any. I have two different 16-bit versions of Castlevania games to play. But man, I cannot praise this game enough for how much fun I've been having playing it. And it's one of those games I have no nostalgia for it, but I have nostalgia for it, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
You have nostalgia for the franchise, not the specific title.
And never having played it, it's like it's so fresh and new and just interesting, and I'm having such a good time playing it. If I have to give it a number grade, dude, it's getting a solid 10 out of 10.
Really?
That's
wow.
the only solid 10 I've ever given. It's just a solid game. There's not anything really bad to say about it. There are no cheap deaths. If you die in the game, it's because you screwed up. If you don't know the patterns, like once you learn the patterns, you get through the game pretty easy. And if you make a mistake, that's when you die, is when you make stupid mistakes. So there's not much, not anything bad I can really say about it.
Praise doesn't get much higher than that, ladies and gentlemen.
No, it doesn't. Like I said, this is worth getting the Genesis Mini. And if you're not gonna get the Mini and you have a Switch or a PlayStation 4, go pick up the Castlevania. What is it called again? The Castlevania
Anniversary Collection.
Yeah, Anniversary Collection, and you'll get. I think it's one. Let me see. What was on that collection? I know you definitely get the first one. I think you get 2, 3. This game, I know there's like 4 or 5 different Castlevania games you can get for it. But
let's see. I'm actually pulling it up now.
Okay.
You get Castlevania 1, 2, 3, Super Castlevania 4, Castlevania The Adventure, Castlevania 2, Belmont's Revenge, Bloodlines, Kid Dracula, never released in English, and then History of Castlevania, Book of the Crescent Moon.
That's fantastic. How much does it say how much it is? Like $20-$30 or something.
$20.
That's not bad at all.
That's a steal.
Yeah, that is.
Holy crap.
If you're not jumping on that right now, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah. Heck, it's almost worth it even with the Genesis Mini.
Yeah. Well,
because it's got all those other games with it.
And honestly, I'm not a fan of the Genesis version of Tetris. Other than that, I've yet to play a bad game on it. I've played most of the games on it so far, especially all the Sonic games. There's a couple of RPGs I haven't tried out yet that are on there. But I'm still going through each game. It's hard to when I want to play this game so much and Sonic Spinball. because those two games have taken up most of my time in the last few weeks.
Oh, Spinball's great.
Oh, it's so good. Once you learn how to control Sonic and get all the little power ups and everything, dude, it is so fun.
Yeah,
I
it's
think I might
awesome.
do a review of that next month. We should do a
No, you
dual
should.
review of it. Since you're the big Sonic
Yeah,
guy, we should do a dual review of it after you get
yeah.
your Genesis Mini.
No, I'd love to.
But yeah, that's my review for Castlevania Bloodlines. Perfect game. Absolutely perfect game to play for the month of October. Pretty much any time of the year is good for Castlevania. I give it a solid 10. It is damn near a perfect video game, especially if you're into side scrollers. You can't get much, better than Castlevania Bloodlines. It's so good.
I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't expecting a perfect 10. I thought you would give it probably a solid 9. I can't remember how many 10s we've given out on this
I don't
show.
think we've ever, well, maybe one or two.
I don't even think I gave Ocarina of Time a 10.
I don't even know if I gave Star Tropics a 10.
I don't know. We should have been keeping track of like what
Yeah.
score we give each game.
But like I said, there's nothing bad I can say about this game at all.
That's
I
fantastic.
mean, there's
I can't wait to
no
play it.
there's no controller problems, there's no glitches or, weird stupid things that, don't belong in the game. It's a great side-scrolling shooter, or not shooter, but just side-scrolling platformer that I think everybody should play, especially if you're into horror games or that kind of aesthetic, that Castlevania aesthetic.
Yeah, for sure. I will say as a closing, I guess it's on topic but not on topic. We mentioned Castlevania season 3 on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
There is no like actual premiere date for it.
Really, I wonder if they're holding it off until next year.
Maybe so.
'Cause I
It
know
says
they
here
did.
that season 3 is confirmed.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was confirmed as soon as season 2 came out.
Let's see.
Oh darn! Means I'm gonna have to go and rewatch the first 2 seasons again.
Says some reports also noted that Castlevania season 3 would be out in fall of 2019.
Hmm.
Since the animated series is prepping for a Halloween release, and that it confirmed the upcoming season would consist of 10 episodes.
Well, I mean, Netflix has been pretty notorious lately for just dropping things without saying anything. So
Yeah.
maybe they'll be dropping it at the end of the month. Wouldn't surprise me to just get on Netflix and all of a sudden there's Castlevania.
Yeah, I'm looking at other stuff now, and there's no actual concrete release date.
I
So
did.
who knows? Maybe we'll look at the end of the month and we'll see season 3.
I tweeted the other day that Derek seemed to have a bit of an aversion to something I should have talked about what I did this week. Like I've never watched Friends ever. Never had a
Oh,
desire
jeez.
to. Even back in the day when it was new, it just wasn't my thing, or it didn't seem like my thing. It seemed like a TV show of preppy people doing preppy things. And I had no desire to ever really watch it. So up until this last weekend, I have never, ever seen an episode of Friends. I could not tell you what that show was about. I didn't get the memes. I didn't get any of the jokes people would put on like social media. I just didn't get it, didn't care. But I was home all day on Saturday. I was cleaning my apartment and I was like, you know what? I want to have some good background noise. And I listened to this podcast called Current Geek, and they do these episodes they call autopilot, where they'll watch a pilot for a TV show and talk about it and whether or not it was kind of consistent with the rest of the series. Like, they did Cheers, and they do like old stuff like the original Battlestar Galactica and things like that. A couple of weeks ago, they did Friends, and I don't know, it just kind of got in my head that I was like, you know what? I've never seen Friends, so I'm just going to try out the first episode. Next thing you know, I'm like 5 episodes deep, and I'm laughing at stupid jokes. I'm like, oh my God. It got me.
You've been converted.
I've been converted. They got me. I think I have a new show to watch now.
Now, I will say in your defense, I've like you, I've never seen a single episode of it. I was doing it strictly to troll.
Oh, I know. But that's the thing. Like, I just, it just never crossed my radar, and like, I just got
Same.
to the point, I was like, you know what? I've never seen it. I might as well just give it a try just to see what it's about. And I kind of like it. So, I liked How I Met Your Mother, and it's kind of got a How I Met Your Mother vibe to it. Plus, it's weird. It kind of brings me back to the 90s. Like, that show is dripping with 90s like pop culture and just the look of it and the jokes and the fashion. So I'm just like, yeah, I remember this time. So it took me right back to like the mid 90s. So I'm having a good time watching. I watch an episode here and there when I have like folding laundry or don't have anything else better to watch. So I don't think it's anything I'm gonna binge, but it'll be something to watch. Like when I just need something to watch and I don't know what I want to watch.
It's interesting because a lot of those shows that were popular back then, I missed out on. Like,
Yeah,
I never watched Seinfeld until it came out on DVD for the first time.
really.
And I remember watching the first couple of episodes, and I thought, this is the most boring thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Oh, they did.
But after,
Well, you mentioned Seinfeld. They did an episode on Seinfeld too, and it's weird. Like I actually went back and watched the pilot episode of Seinfeld about a year or so ago, and it's weird how
yeah,
different that pilot is from the rest of the show.
no, you're absolutely right. But once I got through, because the first season's only, I think, like 5 or 8 episodes long.
Yeah,
It may be a little bit more than that, but I know it's definitely not over 10.
yeah. Well, I think it was like a mid-season replacement or something like that.
Yeah. But after that, like, I love that show. It was
Yeah.
fantastic. And I know, like, people swear by Friends. Like, people will call that the greatest show that's ever been created.
I know. I think, I'm not, like I said, I'm not too deep into it. I'm only like 6 episodes into the first season. It's okay. Maybe it gets better, but I'm not gonna make that judgment call just yet.
That would be, I just had an idea for a show we could do. Top 5 favorite all-time TV shows.
I'm down for that.
That would be tough to do, actually.
Uh,
I would do it strictly, keep it strictly as live action.
well, there's a lot of shows that I like that are not necessarily my favorite shows, but they're more guilty pleasures type of watches. Like I love Married with Children. Like that show
Yeah.
is so stupid, but there is something about that show that makes me laugh every time I watch it. Like I love that. I love MASH. Like MASH is such a good show. Like those early seasons with Trapper John and Henry Blake. Man, those first couple of seasons were just magic.
So many good shows.
Yeah, we need to do that
I mean,
episode. Let's get Wally and and Joey back on for that one too.
yeah, no, that'd be fantastic because I don't know, it's tough to narrow it down to just 5 specifics because I like a bunch of shows for different reasons.
Yeah.
Like to me, my background noise show is Cheers because I've seen every episode several times. Like I've watched that entire series through at least 3 or 4 times. So now it's just become background noise for me.
Yeah. I actually just started watching that a few weeks ago too, because of course they did a Cheers episode for that podcast, Current Geek, and
Yeah.
Cheers just didn't capture me as much as Friends kind of did. Like, don't get me wrong, I like it, but it is so 80s. Like,
Oh yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
the jokes I just kind of didn't get because they're jokes of the time. And it's, I don't know, it's maybe I need to give it a little more time to kind of get into it. But I can say right now, my favorite show of all time is Scrubs. I have watched
Oh, Scrubs is a good one.
I have watched that show all the way through, except for that final season, that very last season where they came back and it was all shitty. I don't count that one.
Yeah, that one was really
I
bad.
think it's like 9 seasons that they did with the regular cast. And man, I have watched that entire series all the way through at least 5 times.
Eagle.
Ego. Sorry, girls.
I-
Computer's broken. Yeah.
the janitor was easily my favorite character of that entire show. Well, him and
Oh,
Dr.
yeah.
Cox.
I like
They
the
were both
Todd.
great. Yeah, the Todd. I don't know. For
yeah.
me, it flip flops between Cheers and Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Oh,
If
I
you
love
if
me
you
some
count Whose
Line.
Line,
Oh yeah,
that
that's a
show
good
was
one.
so freaking great.
Yeah.
It's not a traditional like sitcom or drama type show, but man, I have laughed so hard and I have shed tears of laughter from Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah. Did you ever watch the original one from the English episodes
Oh yeah.
back in the 90s? Man, I used to watch that on Comedy Central all the time.
Mm-hmm.
God, that show was so good. Even the newer
Yep.
ones, like with the Drew Carey was hosting it. Man, those are good.
Yeah, that was the incarnation that I was introduced to. Then I went back and watched the British version.
Yeah.
It's still on the air. Aisha Tyler took Drew Carey's spot. It's still funny, but to me, like she doesn't have that same dynamic with that cast that Drew
Yeah.
Carey did.
Man, that was a good show. Oh man, we could sit and talk about this for hours. So we should probably go ahead and wrap this
Yeah.
up.
I'll also throw in House and Breaking Bad as really good shows too.
Oh yeah, House was so good. You know what? All right, before we go, I've been watching this show called The Good Doctor. Have you watched that yet?
I've heard of it.
If you're
I
into
haven't
medical
watched it.
dramas like House, I think if you liked House, you'll like The Good Doctor.
Okay.
So give that a try. It's only like I think it's in its 3rd season now. It just started its 3rd season, but I really like that show. Like I like a good, cheesy medical drama.
Yeah.
Even
there
though
are so many good shows.
even though I was an EMT and I can point out like every single mistake they do on the show, it's still fun to watch.
Yeah.
But anything else you want to talk about before we leave tonight?
Yeah, just as always, be sure to check out the Derek Diamond Experience podcast. New episodes come out every Thursday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher Radio. You can just search for the Derek Diamond Experience. Follow me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at D Diamond Podcast. I'll actually be appearing at a convention this weekend in Dothan, Alabama called Fanaticon. It's going to be October 4th through the 6th, and some of the names that will be there are Wrestling Hall of Fame broadcaster Jim Ross, George Lowe, who is the voice of Space Ghost, and quite a few more guests. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'll be there, conducting interviews, probably do some Facebook Live stuff. So I'll release all that content that I do. It depends on how much I get. I might do just one full episode that has all the content from that convention, or if the interviews are long enough to sustain as entire episodes, then I'll release multiple ones. So
Awesome.
we shall see. It's going to be a fun weekend, though.
Oh, yeah. One thing I keep forgetting to tell everybody about, my band, Falls from Grace, just released an EP entitled Thelma on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, wherever you can download music. You can go check it out. We actually have our first record on there, Pleasure and Pain, and then we have Thelma, which we just released a few weeks ago. And we call it Thelma because that was the name of our touring van. And we wanted to give her a good, wanted to honor her by naming the EP after her. And we used her as the album cover too. So if you go to Spotify, just look up Falls from Grace, and the new EP is called Thelma. And also, if you want to follow us, it's at FFG Band on Twitter and Instagram. And we will be playing a show in November at the Biloxi Civic Center, November 16th. So if you're in the Biloxi area, please come out and see the show. Go listen to us on Spotify. Leave us a review wherever you listen to the music. So thank you for doing that, everybody. And I think that's
Awesome.
about
I'll
it.
go check. I'll go check that out after we're done.
Awesome. And I think that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and play our music. If you would like to email us, you can reach us at nerdcaveretro@gmail.com. We are at nerdcaveretro.com. We're on Instagram and Twitter at NerdCaveRetro and individually at JFunktastic and at Derek_Diamond. We're on Facebook at Facebook.com/NerdCaveRetro. Of course, we're on Patreon at Patreon.com/NerdCaveRetro. Go throw us a couple of bucks a month and get us back up to that $50 level so we can give you those extra episodes every month. And of course, if you can't do that, leave us a review wherever you listen to the show and find podcasts are sold, especially on Spotify. Go listen to us on Spotify and leave us a review. So thank you, everyone. And Derek, please tell everyone what it's all about.
May the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.
Yes.
Master Blaster runs Bartertown.
That was a fun episode.
Yes.
And thank you, everyone, for watching us on Twitch tonight. And for everybody that watches us on YouTube, we will see you guys next week. Goodbye.